Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Open Championship Data Dive Show. We have a lot to cover this evening. We are going to take a first look at the forecast. We have the updated field loaded in to Fantasy National. We are going to check the 2016 leaderboard, see what shot types and metrics and types of players we want to focus on this week for Royal Troon, and of course we're going to take a look at all previous Open Championship performances for the players in the field this week and see who we think is best suited for the 2024 edition. So it's going to be a fun show. Quite looking forward to it. Let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where earlier today I posted some research around the past 11 winners of the Open Championship going back to 2012. The pattern that those Open champions all share, and the 15 players that also fit that pattern that are in the field this week. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in the DFS contests I play. I know a lot of people do futures. I took a look at the odds board for the first time today and then fired off some players at some numbers that I really liked for the Open Championship. So if you want to see my weekly betting card and my top player usage in the DFS contests I play, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening as we continue the DFS talk over in his Substack chat. After calls and the DFS Tactics show. It's always a fun discussion over there. We'll talk about game theory, favorite areas of the price board. You really are missing out if you are not subscribed to his article. I can't recommend it enough. So make sure you are subscribed to his article and go show him some support. Follow him over on social media. Lastly, we are live. Chat is open. Would love to hear from you all. In addition to any success that you had for the Scottish and the ISCO, what players are you targeting this week for the Open Championship? Who is your favorite? Any players you're staying away from? What types of players do you think play well or best in Open Championships and all that? How much do you know of Royal Troon? So feel free to jump in chat and join the discussion. Would love to hear from you all out in the community. So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2024 Open Championship. And we are going to start, as we always do on a Monday evening, over at the extended Wind Finder forecast. We are, of course, over in Scotland for the Open Championship in Troon. And pardon me as I center this camera once again. We see that the wind does look like it'll pick up a little bit on Thursday and Friday. Now this is very, very subject to change, so we don't want to go too crazy with thinking of any potential wave advantage or anything like that. But it does appear that some wind will be a factor this week, and then looks like it kind of dies off over the weekend, at least 48 hours or so from the tournament starting, looking like we could have a pretty calm weekend to the Open Championship. However, there is quite a bit of wind behind it, so if this forecast change, if it moves up or whatnot, the most important part that I want to talk about, at least in terms of weather this evening beyond the wind, it doesn't look like there's going to be any rain in the lead up to play starting early Thursday morning. So I think that we are going to get true Open Championship style conditions with being firm and fast. It does look like we will get a little bit of wind, but I don't think we are going to have to worry about adjusting our idea around how it's going to play, considering there isn't a lot of rain in the forecast, or no rain in the forecast leading up to the start of play this week. Hey, good evening, Darnell. Thanks for jumping in chat. Hoping this week will be the week. Fortunately for me, it seems like unfortunately for you, my week was fantastic last week. I don't know if you saw the social media posts, and didn't see you in chat last night, but it was almost a year-making week for me. I had Bobby Mack outright. I had 40% of the playoff at the ISCO. It was a fantastic week. I had a lineup that finished third at the ISCO in one of the DFS contests. I mean, I'd had about a month, 3 or 4 weeks of some pretty poor performance. So last week was a big confidence boost, a big shot in the arm, a nice change of pace than what had been going on. So yes, we're going to try and keep the momentum for me. We're going to try to build some momentum for you. I appreciate that. Like I said, it's you got to get a little bit lucky. You do. Definitely at the ISCO, making Pearson Cootie and Rico Hoey 2 of my maybe 3 or 4 core plays certainly panned out. The Bobby Mack outright, even though I didn't play him much in DFS, I chose to have my exposure to him being an outright, and that certainly paid off. So it was just a great week, and we're going to try to keep the momentum. Hey, thanks, Awaken. I appreciate it. It's good to see you in chat as well. We're gonna try to keep the momentum. It's the 3rd winter this year, so despite the fact that I'd had about a month or so of some subpar performances, to put it nicely, 3 winners in a year, never gonna complain about that. And my ISCO, I think I cashed, about 60% of the lineups that I played at the ISCO. And that's why I love those alternate field events. And we've got another one this week, by the way. So more on that, at the end of the show. But that's why I love those alternate field events, because if you're willing to put in the work, they generally get forgotten. And as long as you've done some amount of research, you're going to have a big leg up on, your fellow contestants in those DFS contests. Yes, they don't pay as much, but last I checked, if you get more back than you put in, it's profit. And for me, it was a pretty significant profit coming in 3rd in that contest. That lineup that finished 3rd, I had Harry Hall, Pearson Cootie, Rico Hoey, all 3 of them in the playoff. Chan Kim, who had a fantastic Sunday, catapulted himself into the top 15. I mean, it was just a studly lineup. And quite honestly, I was in first for a lot of the weekend. Alex Smalley actually killed me. He's shooting +2 on Sunday is what dropped me 2 points behind the guy that finished 2nd. So it would have been a really good day, but not going to complain. But thanks to you two, for both of you jumping in chat. Much appreciated. We're going to try and keep the momentum, build the momentum if you didn't have success last week. I did like your Ryan Fox play, Darnell. It just, he hadn't been playing well this year, which is a shame, because I have him in my season-long team. That's off the stream and with some former coworkers. We have about 130 of us in a league that's for season long, and Ryan Fox was somebody I really, really put a lot of hopes in, and he hasn't panned out. But anyway, we turn our attention back towards the Open Championship. Again, we got some wind, which is to be expected, but no rain really in the forecast, especially leading up to it. So we're going to approach this as we would, or how we would typically envision an Open Championship. So with that, we're going to move to Fantasy National. I'm going to go ahead and select the moderate and windy conditions. In the past 2 years, or 36 rounds, whichever comes first, in moderate and windy conditions, our top performers have been Scotty, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Xander, Tyrrell Hatton, Wyndham Clark, Jordan Spieth, Rory, Adam Scott, and Corey Connors. Those are your top 10 in terms of wind performance. Players at the other end of the spectrum, Tom Hoagie, Stuart Sink, Bobby Mack's only 2 rounds, wouldn't go, get too carried away with that. Francesco Molinari, Tom Kim, a little bit misleading because his windy performance is stellar. It's his moderate where he's losing a half a shot per round. So use that how you see fit. That is why he is falling significantly, because this moderate is really bad. Some other players here: Davis Thompson, Zach Johnson, Mackenzie Hughes, Billy Horschel, Cam Young, C.T. Pan. These players generally haven't been the best in the wind, which Cam Young's surprising to see because his Open Championship record is stellar. Only 2 events, but very stellar. He's played well in moderate wind, but been very bad in the windiest of conditions. So there you go. There's a look at the players who have been supposedly the best and the worst in windy conditions. This is the Open Championship. I still think it is going to play pretty darn difficult. Just to give you an idea, don't get too carried away with the 2016 mindset or narrative of Henrik and Phil blowing this course out of the water and stuff. Those two played exceptionally well. Phil beat third by 11 shots. So it's difficult here at Troon. These two were just far and away the 2 best players that week. But third being -6. Don't overlook how difficult Troon really is. So, win rounds have been difficult relative to par in the past 2 years. Our top performers, have been Scotty, Rory, Xander, Ludwig Aubert, Tommy Fleetwood, Bryson, Wyndham Clark, Tyrrell Hatton, Patrick Cantlay, John Rahm, and Russell Henley. Those are your top 10 when rounds have been difficult. And then the other side of the coin, players who have not been good when rounds have been difficult. Nick Taylor, Justin Thomas, Thorbjorn Olesen has not been great, at least on the PGA Tour, when rounds have been difficult. Although he is at a positive 210, so it is quite interesting to see. In fact, let me dig in here on the 18 rounds. So the RBC Canadian, it was good. Okay, so the Masters this past year, he was really bad. Made the cut, but then the weekend was really bad. Houston, he was really bad, and that's a very difficult course. Maybe not the best comp, but just showing rounds that have been difficult. So interesting there. Let's see. Others here: DJ, Francesco Molinari, Zach Johnson, Campillo, Eric Cole, Kitayama. So there's a look at the players who have not been good when rounds have been difficult relative to par. Here, the field this year is the best field for this event. It's going to be very hard. Yeah, I agree. This field should be, pretty darn solid. This is always vying for the second most quality field by strength of field. The first will always be the PGA Championship, I believe it is. But it's generally this or the U.S. Open that, or the Players that vie for the second in strength of field. Okay, let's. Anything else we can take a kind of a big picture view here? I don't want to look at course length, although It is right on the border of 7,400 yards, slightly under 7,400 yards. You could maybe argue to look at long courses, but you got some shorter holes here as well. So I'm not in love with the idea of looking at the long course filter. Of course, no architect filter. And then I had mentioned this last night. The reason I'm not using this Open Championship filter is that, save for 1 year, which I think is 2019, I could be incorrect with that, but I'll show it in Microsoft Excel. We just don't get any strokes gained data, except for 1 year that we had it. So not a lot to gain there in terms of using this Open Championship filter, and that's why I'm not using that. We've looked at the win, we've looked at difficult. So yeah, let's go ahead and just jump into the 2016 leaderboard to figure out how Troon played that year. Obviously very difficult, but I think I don't think it's so far back that this data is obsolete. And we can get a good idea of the style of players that performed well that week. So obviously Stinson and Phil Mickelson, two guys who Stinson was always a very good ball striker, pretty good putter, but his trusty 3-wood is what led him to this victory. If we scroll down here to the Open, we see his form coming in. Look at all of the iron success that he'd had. I mean, even off the tee, he had been pretty darn solid leading into the Open Championship that year. A third, a second, did top 25 the Masters, another top 15. So he'd been playing pretty well, especially with the irons leading into his Open Championship win. And then Phil really played conservative. He hit a lot of irons off the tee in 2016. But we look at his performance leading into the Open. Yes, he had a couple of more rough weeks with the irons. He did finish second at the St. Jude, but gained 11.5 on the greens. But before his recent, the downturn of the irons, immediately preceding, look at the iron play beforehand. I mean, he had a top 5, he had a runner-up, he had a top 15, another top 5. He'd been in very good form as well. He was just putting the daylights out. So, in-form iron play, in-form ball strikers, generally what we're looking at. And I X'd it out like an idiot. I did not mean to do that. So 2016. So let's just go ahead and get into a few things here around Troon. Of course, no strokes gained data. So we'll jump into the fairways and greens. The driving page view, kind of looking at the top 17 here. As I would have expected, a lot in the fairways gained. Only 3 players negative in fairways gained. J.B. Holmes here didn't seemingly hit a fairway at all. He just mashed driver, it seems, 114 distance. But what all of these players have are greens and, for the most part, good drives. So even though J.B. Holmes didn't hit any fairways, he was still finding his fair share of greens. The distance here is a little hit and miss. You got some cut making for sure. J.B. Holmes led. You got a top 10, a top 20 from Finau, top 5. Your winner was fairly high in distance, but not direct correlation. Fairways, you got a few missed cuts up here. Now your winner was pretty high, but he led in greens. So few ways to go about looking at this, and the way to think about it. I'm still believing in the good drives gained, in the sense that the players are going to need to hit the fairway. or if they are offline, they are adept enough to hit the greens with the irons from the gorse and the fescue and all that stuff. I mean, it's pretty hard to ignore this pretty solid correlation here with the greens. So let's take a look at a couple of things here pretty quickly. We're gonna look at off the tee, and I had to think about this earlier today with the forecast that is expected right now. And of course, this can all change, and come Wednesday night, everything I said is out the window. But if the wind does indeed blow a little bit, like it looks like it's going to, especially on Thursday and Friday, we take a look at that course breakdown and how the accuracy, even though a lot of players seemed to be clubbing down in 2016, they were still missing a lot of fairways. You can look at the difficult relative to par filter, and I think that's appropriate. I'm actually going to look at this fairways difficult to hit. Even with the players clubbing down, they were having difficulty hitting the fairways. With this filter, with this mindset of fairways being difficult to hit, I want to see who not only is just accurate, because you can hit 6 and 7 irons off the tee and find the fairway. You're just going to be left with 3 woods left in, and you don't want that. So I'm going to look at total driving or strokes gained off the tee when fairways are difficult to hit. I think this is a pretty good match for Troon, at least given the circumstances that we have right now, again with that wind and all that stuff. So your top off the tee players when fairways are difficult to hit are Scotty, Rory, Victor Hovland, Ludwig Aubert, Corey Connors, Xander, Colin Morikawa, Bryson, Patrick Cantlay, and Cam Young. And a part of the reason I really like this this metric and filter combination, you look at your past Open champions. I mean, Xander had won the Open, Colin Morikawa, but Xander's generally just solid. He's got a great record at the Open Championship. Cantlay's got a good record at the Open Championship. Cameron Young, fantastic Open Championship record. Scotty, of course, Rory. Victor Hovland's been very good at Open Championships. So that's why I really liked this metric and filter combination. This off the tee when fairways are difficult to hit. And that's the way I'm leaning right now. But if you want to take a look at it in a different way, I would look at also, or I would agree with you if you wanted to look at difficult relative to par. So your top off the tee players when rounds are difficult relative to par: Rory, Scheffler, Cantlay, Hovland, Hatton, Bryson, Siwoo Kim, Minwoo Lee, Jordan Spieth, and Ben On. We're going to take a look at approach. We're going to skip around the green tonight. I might have a little bit of it factored into the mixed condition model. Still kind of thinking about it, but I know for a fact that iron play, the approach play, is going to be in here. So in the last 3 months, 24 rounds, again, just emphasizing the immediate ball strikers. We looked at Phil, we looked at Stinson. Both of those guys were really, really in form with their irons, and I'll explain that even further when we get to Microsoft Excel. Your top approach players in the past 3 months or 24 rounds: Scotty, Xander, Tony Finau, Colin Morikawa, Corey Connors, Brian Harman, Ben Griffin, Shubhankar Sharma. Again, this is just from the Scottish last week, but he gained on approach every single round by a lot. So perhaps somebody to take at least make a note of that his irons were in fuego last week. Aubert and Tom Hoagie. Those are your top 10 in-form ball strikers, approach players right now. And then the only other thing we'll look at in terms of strokes gained capacity, putting. We're going to look at putting on slow greens like we did last week for the Scottish Open. I think it it turned out well. Just understand that some players are going to rise a little bit artificially just due to their performance on slow greens stateside. The biggest name or the biggest culprit I would say of this is Tom Hoagie. Tom Hoagie 13th in putting on slow greens. Generally not that great. I don't know if so the Scottish isn't labeled as slow yet since it just got loaded. But you see, he didn't necessarily putt all that well last week. So just understand the data that you're looking at. But this is, I think, the best way we can look at it because these greens are a combination of bent and fescue, and there's no fescue filter in Fantasy National. So, on slow greens, the past couple of years, our top putters have been Denny McCarthy, Emiliano Grillo, Sung Jae, Akshay Bhatia, Alex Bjork, Adam Scott, Brendan Todd, Justin Rose, Adam Schenk, and John Rahm. All right, we move to the driving fairways greens, and we're going to we'll look at it the same way. So we'll say when fairways are difficult to hit, we can take a look at distance and fairways and greens. So your top distance players when fairways are difficult to hit: Bryson, Rory, Minwoo Lee, Adam Scott, Ludwig Aubert, Vincent Norman, Nikolai Højgaard, Wyndham Clark, DJ, and Ben On. But you see, none of these players except for Aubert find many fairways. It's all in the distance for these players. Fairways gained, good drives. Let's go. Good. Your best good drives gained players when fairways are difficult to hit: Morikawa, Scheffler, Rye, Lowry, Rahm, Zach Johnson, Victor Paris, Austin Eckroat, Davis Thompson, and Russell Henley. Sure, greens when fairways are difficult: Scheffler, Rahm, Xander, Morikawa, Connors, Glover, Rory, Cam Young, Davis Thompson, Joaquin Niemann. I do like the good drives gained when fairways are difficult to hit. I do like this combination here. But otherwise, I would probably go with the difficult relative to par filter. Yeah. So let's go with greens. Your top greens gained players when rounds are difficult: Scheffler, Rahm, Xander, Rye, Straka, Rory, Cam Young, Morikawa, Hovland, and Tommy Fleetwood. Yeah, I think that's fine. If anybody wants to see something else specific, feel free to put it in chat. But I'm kind of looking at good drives gained when fairways are difficult to hit, greens when scoring's difficult. I think those are probably the two metric and filter combinations I'm looking at right now on this page view. I am a little interested in distance, a little bit, but that's why I'm more so looking like off the tee as opposed to just the distance, because I do think accuracy is going to be important. So we now move to scoring: birdies, bogeys, accuracy off the tee. Yeah, I mean that's generally what you would think for an Open Championship anyway. But there is some correlation here with distance, a little bit. A lot of your cut making, sure. You don't have. I mean, you got some elite finishes interspersed. So that's why I think we want to look at total driving, not just the fairways portion. Because I do think distance does have a small factor, but I don't think it's enough of one to look solo, if that makes sense. And that's why I'm leaning towards just off the tee. All right, let's take a look at birdies and bogeys. Of course, these two running away from the others. Stinson more so in the birdies gained. Phil was just solid all the way around, avoiding bogeys and getting birdies. But Holmes and Stricker, both bogey avoidance. Hatton was all bogey avoidance. Kind of interesting to see this. So if we look at, again, just the top 17 from 2016, 2 players negative in birdies, 1 in bogey avoidance. My first thought was to go to bogey avoidance. You got an 18th and a 39th here, but otherwise pretty elite up top. Whereas the bogey avoidance, oh my. I mean, a 22nd, a 12th, and a 30th, but 2, 3, 4, 9, 5, 1. So I think it is probably the bogey avoidance. Especially if that wind really picks up this week. I do think this is going to play fairly difficult. I don't know if it's going to be as difficult as 2016, but I do think this is going to be pretty difficult. I know not to trust 2016. Phil Mickelson was the man. Hey, he was good that week. I mean, he was good leading up to that as well. Take nothing away from him. He was good leading up to it. Let's see. So yeah, I'm thinking probably bogey avoidance when it's difficult. So in the past 2 years or 36 rounds, your top bogey avoiders when rounds have been difficult relative to par: Scotty, Tommy Fleetwood, Rory, Hideki, Siwoo Kim, Matt Fitzpatrick, Max Homa, Ludwig Aubert, Tyrrell Hatton, and Xander. Now, I would put, a star next to Scotty, next to Rory, next to Ludwig Aubert, next to Hatton. Yeah, probably next to Xander. These guys are great at both birdies gained and bogey avoidance when it's difficult. Brooks, Akshay Bhatia, Sepp Straka's 21st and 15th. Interesting. Bryson, Patrick Cantlay, Morikawa, Victor Hovland. So all those players that I just listed off there, they are both top 25, or they're top 25 in both birdies gained and bogey avoidance when rounds are difficult relative to par. And that's the filter I would definitely use. This is just me as a statistician. I want to match a similar style metric with a similar style filter. So scoring metric with a scoring filter. We won't be looking at birdies or better at all. Definitely no eagles. There's just not a lot of eagles around here. I mean, 1.5 is the highest. I mean, the other 2 par 5s have a less than 1% eagle rate. Eagles just don't happen around Troon. There are some decent birdie chances, but not a lot of eagles. So that's why we'd be looking at only birdies gained and bogey avoidance. And that's why I gave you the names that I did. Those players that are top 25 in both, and I rattled them off just a little bit ago. If the area gets a little bit of rain, I will take a look at opportunities in case the course is a little bit softer. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case, but the weather changes quite quickly and quite frequently over there. So we're just going to take a look at let's just take a look at 2024. So just understand the live players won't have the amount of data that these other players do. But in the last 36 rounds or 2024 season, your top opportunities gained players have been Scotty, Lucas Glover, Tom Hoagie, Sami Valimaki, Rory, Ludwig Aubert, Keegan, Wyndham Clark, Corey Connors, and Tony Finau. Tom Kim, Brian Harman, Morikawa. Harman and Morikawa, Open champions. Tom Kim's played very well in Open championships, so Yeah, I like opportunities to gain a little bit, but it's mostly bogey avoidance in this page view. All right, let's go to can't do proximity. I was going to say proximity. Can't do proximity. We just don't get anything in terms of proximity. So we'll go to par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Look at the par 3s from Troon in 2016. Pretty darn solid. Henrik Stenson, Phil Mickelson, Sergio. These guys really played the par 3s well, except for Ernie Els, who missed the cut. Look at this correlation. First, fifth, second. Third, ninth. Top 15, top 20, top 20. Yes, a middling from Luke Donald. Top 5, top 25. Par 3s made pretty significant in 2016. If I had to guess, it would probably be the 200 to 225 range. But I'm going to hold off on saying that because we just, as we saw, we just didn't get the data. We just got the strokes gained par 3 totals. So your top par 3 performers. Let's do. Let me clear this out. Let's narrow it in because we're not looking at a specific range. So last 3 months, 24 rounds. Your top par 3 performers in the last 3 months have been Xander, Colin Morikawa, Bryson, Wyndham Clark, Corey Connors, C.T. Pan, Akshay Bhatia, Tony Finau, Sepp Straka, and Jesper Svensson. Only 8 rounds. When the par 5s here are the easiest hole, whoever scores on the par 3s, best for at the top. I mean, yeah, that's generally how it is anyway, but you could have taken a look at this as well from the course breakdown. We did this a little bit last night, but like look at the top 10s, the top 5s, the par 3s, overtook the par 4s here at Troon the 2 years, 2016 until 2004. And then the winners really played the par 3s the best, or play them well. So yeah, I do think par 3s are going to have a decent amount of weight come Wednesday night. We look at the par 4s. Again, nothing in terms of a range, but Henrik Stenson, Phil Mickelson really played them well. You can't ignore them. So your top par 4 performers, Scotty, Rory, Xander, Morikawa, Rye, who's on an absolute heater right now, Bobby Mack, Bryson, Obear, Hovland, and Connors. And, of course, the par 5s, which you're going to have to play them well. Although Hatton didn't necessarily play them as well, but look how strong everybody above him was. Hatton didn't do... He mainly made his up in the par 4s. I mean, even Soren Kjeldsen in 2016 played the par 5s extremely well. Second, first, fifth, ninth, Bubba. Third, fourth. So, your top par 5 performers, Thompson, Finau, Billy, Rory, Cantlay, Hughes, Romain Langasque. It's just from the Scottish Open, so don't get carried away with that. Victor, Aaron Rai, Sungjae. All right, I'll bring this back to the strokes gained page view in case we want to take a look at anything in particular. Let's go and take a look at some Open Championship data. Normally this is my comparison course file, but with the Open Championship rotating, I keep this in a separate file. So you see, Troon this year, Liverpool, St. Andrews. Let me zoom out just a little bit and get some more in here. But the 1 year that we got some amount of strokes gained was 2019 at Royal Portrush. But you see, even then, we only got off the tee and approach. We didn't even get around the green or putting. So that's why I have just kind of ignored all of this when I went to the early look file. That's why I just completely eliminated it. There's just not enough data. It's inconsistent. So do not get carried away with this. It is all just from 1 year at Royal Portrush we're not there this year. So instead, let's take a look at how Open Championships have done in terms of distance and fairways, good drives. So the distance here is a 9 that's slightly above the PGA average, but it's the lowest of the majors. The Masters, the U.S. Open, these numbers are gaudy. Masters and the U.S. Open's pushing 20. This is less than half of that. Distance just isn't a huge deal. Royal Troon in 2016, probably one of the biggest numbers of the Open Championships. It's this one here. So let me highlight this row. That way I know where it is. Let me highlight that row for you. It is one of the biggest numbers in terms of distance for past Open Championships. In fact, it is the biggest at a 16. That's why I think distance is going to be something. We don't want to only look at fairways, but I don't think this is a big enough number, and generally Open Championships don't favor a lot of distance anyway, that we want to focus on distance. I think that we want to do total driving. At least that's where I'm sitting 48 hours from the tournament. It could change, but that's where I'm at. Hey, P, thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you shared in the success from the Scottish Open and the ISCO, and hope you had just a good weekend in general. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Fairways, surprisingly, this is a pretty low number. It's a fairly low number. 1.5, which is slightly higher than the Open Championship average. Okay. It's kind of hard because a lot of players I think will be clubbing down, which kind of lends itself to fairway finding anyway. Good drives gained in the greens. This greens number is actually a little bit lower than what I would have thought. Really kind of getting hurt by this 0.05. Like you see it jumps 0.3 if you remove that low outlier there. But this is a low number. Good drives gained is a pretty big number. This is 2.5. I think the average full field course on the PGA Tour is like a 1.9 or so. So this is pretty important. So the more I think about it, the more I'm liking good drives gained as a statistic. Looking at scoring, again, just not a lot of eagles to be had. It's just not a big deal usually around the Open Championship, except for maybe St. Andrews. Like you would expect, if a tournament is difficult, you're going to be going into the bogey avoidance. So if the wind does die down a little bit, or if that forecast suggests that the wind might die down a little bit, I might add a little bit of birdies gained or opportunities into the mixed condition model. But as of right now, I'm looking at bogey avoidance because it's going to be difficult. Moving to the par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Again, we don't really want to do too much in terms of a specific length because courses are laid out obviously quite differently. But this, you see the average Open Championship is only a 1.25 in terms of par 3s. Look at how much it was for Troon in 2016. It's the biggest par 3 number. So, big deal there. I do think par 3s are going to play a pretty big factor. I don't want to overstate it, but I'm looking at more than 5% in par 3s as of right now. Based on the leaderboard from 2016, based on what I see here data-wise, I think par 3s are going to be carrying some significance. Par 4s, generally very, very important because a lot of Open Championships are par 70s and 71s. St. George's is 70. Most are 71s. The only one that I see is the old course, St. Andrews at 72. Liverpool 72. So when you have a par 70 or par 71, generally par 4s are emphasized a little bit more because there's more of them. And then par 5's a 2.01. That's pretty high. Not the highest, but pretty high. So there's a little bit of some raw, detailed data around past Open Championships. Again, I generally like trying to look at strokes gained, but we just don't have any of that for the Open Championship. So yeah. So we're going to move to the early look file. We'll cover a couple things here. Take a look at the players in the field this week who have performed well at a lot of these metrics that we think are going to play well at Troon. And then I'll finish the show off showing you kind of the crux of my research that I posted on social media. So just be aware this is performance at all Open Championships going back to 2012. Yes, each course has its own oddities and plays slightly different than the next, but generally speaking, most link style courses emphasize similar skill sets, and that's why I'm going to have a decent amount of a factor of how well a player has played in past Open Championships. So players like Cam Young or Victor, Scotty, they might rise a little bit more because I'm going to emphasize the anyone who has shown continued success at Open Championships. So again, no strokes gained data, so we'll just go straight into the fairways and greens. Let's go with good drives. That's where I'm at. We'll also look at greens, but I do like the idea of good drives gained. So your top good drives gained players since the 2012 Open Championship. Cam Young, Yuto Katsuragawa, only one tournament, so be aware of that. Abraham Answer, high on the good drives. Henrik Stenson, Valimaki's only one. Rasmus Højgaard's only one, and he missed the cut. Scotty Scheffler, Molinari, a past Open champion. Moronk, Adam Scott, somebody I was very high on last week, and I'm probably going to be again because he has shown he plays link style courses very well. Tom Kim, Victor Paris, Tiger has even been pretty darn good with good drives gained at least. Cantlay, pretty solid. Of course, Spieth, 10 for 10. Average finish inside the top 20 at the Open Championship. Definitely want to look at greens because these greens are smaller than most Open Championship venues. I don't have an exact figure, but the number or comparison that I've heard throughout yesterday and today was that these are about half the size of the St. Andrews greens. Now, yes, the St. Andrews greens are about a mile wide or mile big, but these are pretty small by Open Championship standards. So, your top greens game players, Cam Young, Scheffler, there's Moronk again, Stenson, Scott, Cantlay, Hovland. Rahm makes an appearance up here. Straka's only 1 for 2. There's Spieth and Paris again. Matthew Jordan. Rory down here at the bottom of your screen. Decent with greens. Going to skip the scoring, I guess. No, we'll go bogey avoidance. Your top bogey avoiders in Open Championships. Kinoshita. Look at that, Shubhankar Sharma. We talked about him a little bit, how red hot his irons were at the Scottish Open. He's 3 for 3 at Open Championships. Tommy Fleetwood, bogey avoider. Cam Young, Victor, Spieth, Adam Scott again, Max Homa, Moronk, Molinari, Fitzpatrick. So he'll probably rise a little bit more than what I would think. But despite what you said last week, Darnell, I'm actually not as high on Fitz this week because his performance at Open Championships hasn't been great. It's been okay, hasn't been great. So I'm not as high on him this week. Rory, J-Day, 7 for 9. Justin Rose, 7 for 10. Okay. We'll look at par 3s and I guess par 5s. It's kind of hard because I don't know the exact range that we want to look at. Your top par 3 performers in past Open Championships, Seabass 3 for 4, but kind of leaving a lot to be desired in terms of average finish. There's Cam Young taking advantage of par 3s, Cantlay, Stinson, Morikawa, Tom Kim, Moronk, Adam Scott, Ricky's taking advantage of par 3s, Scotty. Okay. Yeah, we'll go ahead and take a look at par 5s. But not sure how much value this adds just because Troon is different than a lot of other courses. They'll probably play roughly the same, but top par 5 performers in Open Championships, Cam Young, Scotty, Minwoo Lee, Jordan L. Smith, C. Tagala. Only 1 for 2, but taking advantage of par 5s. Xander, 6 for 6, average finish of 20th. Fairly solid. Bobby Mack, 4 for 4, average finish of 30th. Rory, 8 for 10. Stinson's 8 for 10. Morikawa's only 1 for 3, but that 1 is a championship. Victor. All right. I'm going to end the show off with showing you some of the crux of the data that led to what I posted today over on social media. There's the sorted players by average finish. Let's start with the winner matrix. Again, this is performance at past Open Championships before their win. Let me fix that for you all. So let's look at Brian Harman. The year before, he had a top 10. He had a top 20 2 years prior to that. Cam Smith had a prior top 20. Morikawa was really kind of the outlier. He won in his first trip to the Open Championship. Now, he's missed the cut both of these years. But he's the outlier. I mean, even Lowry, look at Lowry. 4 missed cuts in a row, but he had a top 10. Top 10 from Molinari, top 15, a top 5 from Spieth. So 10 of these 11, Morikawa is the exception. Every other player here had at least a prior top 20 at an Open Championship. If you take away Cam Smith and Collin Morikawa, then these 9 of the 11, these 9 all had a previous top 10 at an Open Championship. So, despite the changing venues, prior success at an Open Championship has been fairly indicative. It doesn't have to be recent. See Shane Lowry, 4 missed cuts in a row. But he had a prior top 10. So that was one of the first criteria, is prior top 20. Let's take a look at some recent form, shall we? This is the tournament before playing in the Open Championship. Now, the first 2 years of the Scottish Open, we didn't get any strokes gained data, but Xander finishing 10th, Harman finishing 12th, I'd have to think that they're at least field average with the irons, I would think. So look at this iron play leading into the Open Championship. Just stellar. I mean, this is Stinson. Even he gained a half a stroke at the Players before playing in the Open Championship, where he was bad everywhere else, but his irons were still there. 8, almost 8.5, 4.5, 5, 5.5. Lots of solid iron play leading up to the Open Championship winner. And all but 2 of these players made the cut to a fairly solid finish. The cuts made are all inside the top 30. You take away Lowry 2019, every single one of these finishes is inside the top 25 in their previous event of the ones that made the cut. So players that have won the Open Championship are in great recent form. And to expand on that, let's take a look a little bit further back than just their one tournament. Let's look at Brian Harman, top 15, top 10, a runner-up, even another top 10 a little bit further back after the Masters. Great recent form. 2022's winner, Cam Smith, top 10's the Scottish Open, top 15, top 15. Solid, absolutely solid. 2021, who was that? I'm going to have to cheat. Morikawa. Look at Colin Morikawa. 4th, 2nd, 8th, 7th. Amazing recent form. Recent form. The only one that doesn't fit is Hunter Extenson. And these are all tournaments gathered from the Masters. Or since the Masters of that year. So early April. But every single one of these players, except for Stenson, had at least 2 top 10s or 3 top 15s. But most of them had at least 2 top 10s, if not more. Since the Masters of that year. That's a very, very small time frame for these players to accrue these top 10s. So recent form is a major, major indicator of success at the Open Championship. So those are the big facets or the big crux of what went into my research today and what I posted over on social media. So if you want to see that and the 15 players, that's right, 15. I think I got that. Yeah, I got that right. Look at that. 15 players that fit the criteria. I posted that over to social media today, over on X specifically. So if you want to see that, make sure you give me a follow over at X and check that out. But I need to thank Darnell, Awaken, and P for jumping in chat. It's very much appreciated. And thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do. Giving you a statistician and data analyst's view of what he sees, digging into some deep dive golf statistics, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Some weeks are better than others. We had a very, very good week last week, so we're going to try to keep that momentum for the final major of the year, the Open Championship. Don't forget, there is another alternate field event this week, the Barracuda Championship. It's a pretty fun tournament. It's not a stroke play event. It is a modified Stableford format. This is the tournament that Akshay Bhatia won last year in Reno, Tahoe. So I will be live tomorrow night for the full show, research, data, and DFS. Just like I was last week for the ISCO, tomorrow will be the full Barracuda show. So make sure you set your reminders for that. Thanks again for all the support. Really appreciate it. For all of the wagers that you've made so far for the Open Championship, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Open Championship, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Barracuda full show, may all your bets be profitable.